I remember your hands.
Sullivan Vance stepped onto a rain-slicked street. Sirens cleared traffic. Cameras tracked his every step. Then he stopped walking. A woman knelt on a torn blanket, drawing a bow across a cracked violin for spare coins. Vance's bodyguards froze behind him, waiting for an order that never came. He crossed the street alone. Reporters raised their phones. Vance dropped to his knees on broken pavement, right in front of a woman the city had long forgotten. The crowd fell silent. Nobody understood why a billionaire would kneel before a stranger. Her fingers trembled on the strings. She refused to look at his face. Then Vance leaned close and whispered 4 words into her ear. She dropped the violin. The 4 words hung in the air. I remember your hands. Wren Calloway stared at Sullivan Vance like he had spoken a language she used to know and had spent years trying to forget. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Behind them, a woman in a red coat raised her phone, angling for a better shot of the billionaire kneeling on the sidewalk. A delivery man stopped mid-stride, box balanced on his shoulder, jaw hanging open. Sir. Garrett Holloway stepped forward, his hand hovering near Vance's elbow. We should move this somewhere private. No, Vance said, not looking at him. More people gathered. A bus slowed at the curb, doors hissing open, then closing again as the driver craned his neck to watch. Someone shouted from across the street, asking if this was a movie shoot. It wasn't. Wren pulled her violin case against her chest like a shield. Get up, she said again, quieter this time. Please. Not until you tell me your name. You already know it. You said it back there like you knew me. I need to hear you say it, Vance said. I need to know it's really you. A siren wailed 2 blocks away, then faded. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone shutter clicked over and over. Wren's eyes darted to the strangers closing in around them. A police car rolled past, the officer slowing to watch through his window before continuing on. They're going to move me along, Wren said. They always do. And tomorrow I won't even have this corner. You'll never lose this corner again, Vance said. You'll never lose anything again. You don't get to promise me that. Her voice cracked. You don't know what my life has been. Then tell me. Wren's fingers tightened on the case. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, or a memory clawing its way up after 26 years buried under survival. Wren, she said finally. My name is Wren Calloway. Vance closed his eyes like the name had struck him somewhere deep in the chest. I know, he whispered. The crowd murmured. Someone repeated the name out loud, testing it, like they were trying to place it inside a headline they hadn't read yet. Garrett leaned down. Sir, 6 phones are recording this. If you want it handled quietly. I don't want it handled quietly, Vance said, rising to his feet, brushing broken glass from his knees without flinching. I want the whole city to see exactly who I'm standing in front of. He turned to face the crowd, and for the first time, his voice carried, clear, hard, deliberate. This woman saved my life when I was 9 years old, he said, and this city let her freeze on a sidewalk while I built skyscrapers 3 miles from here. Silence swallowed the street. Somewhere in that silence, a man near the back of the crowd lowered his phone, turned, and walked quickly toward a parked car, already dialing a number that would ruin someone's morning. 3 miles away, in a glass office on the 40th floor, a phone buzzed against a marble desk. Preston Kingsley Ashford III ignored it at first. He was mid-sentence with 2 board members, walking through the Vance Capital merger closing Friday. The phone buzzed again. Then a 3rd time. Excuse me, Ashford said, and stepped into the hallway. The voice on the line came fast, breathless. You need to see this. It's already trending. Ashford opened the video. He watched Sullivan Vance kneel on a sidewalk. He watched Vance pull out a photograph. He watched the crowd swell around them like water filling a cracked dam. His face didn't move. His hand did, knuckles whitening around the phone, because Ashford knew exactly who Wren Calloway was. 26 years earlier, Ashford's father had owned the Delancey Street apartment building. Cheap wiring, overcrowded units, a fire marshal's report that never reached City Hall because a check arrived at the right office at the right time. 2 children died in that fire. The city closed its investigation within a month. Ashford's family kept their empire, and by the time Preston inherited it, nobody remembered the fire, except the people who had lived through it. Ashford had assumed the two surviving kids had vanished into the foster system for good. He had built half his fortune on land his father's negligence should have buried him for. Now one of those kids knelt on national television as a billionaire, and the other was about to become the most sympathetic figure New York had seen in a decade. "Pull it down," Ashford said. "Get it off every platform you can reach." "Sir, it's already been shared 40,000 times. There's no pulling it down." Ashford closed his eyes. "Open them. Then get me everything on Wren Calloway. Every shelter, every citation, every eviction. I want a story ready by tonight. Something that makes people stop feeling sorry for her." A pause on the line. "Sir, that could look... I don't care how it looks. I care how it ends." Back on the sidewalk, Wren watched Vance's security team form a loose perimeter, holding back the growing crowd without touching anyone. A woman pushed forward, phone extended. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did you really save his life?" Wren didn't answer. Her eyes drifted to the violin case at her feet, scuffed and taped along one seam, the same case her mother had carried out of that building the year before the fire took her. "I didn't save anyone," Wren said quietly. "I just didn't let go of his hand." Vance heard her. Something tightened in his chest. "That's the same thing," he said. Garrett leaned toward him, his voice low enough that only Vance could hear. "Sir, Ashford Realty Group just went dark on 3 of our shared channels." "That's not a coincidence." Vance's jaw set. "Find out what they're hiding," he said, "and find out fast, because if Preston Ashford is scrambling, it means something in that fire report scares him." By nightfall, the video had 11 million views. Wren sat in the back of a car she never agreed to enter, watching the city blur past tinted glass. Vance sat across from her, phone at his ear, voice low and clipped. "I don't care what Ashford's lawyers say. Get me the original fire marshal's report. The real one, not whatever sits in the public archive." He hung up, looked at Wren. "You don't have to do any of this," she said. "The cameras, the car, whatever this is. I was fine on that corner." "You weren't fine," Vance said. "You were surviving. There's a difference." Wren looked away, her jaw tight. "Surviving is what people like me do. You wouldn't understand that." "I understand it better than you think." The car slowed outside a shelter on 9th Avenue, the one Wren slept in 3 nights a week when the weather turned. A woman stood outside, arms crossed, watching the car with open suspicion. "That's Marisol," Wren said. "She runs intake." Vance stepped out first, offering a hand Wren didn't take. She climbed out on her own, gripping the violin case tight. Marisol's eyes narrowed as Vance approached. "You're the guy from the video," she said. "What do you want with my shelter?" "I want to know what happened to Wren's paperwork," Vance said. "Every housing application gets denied, every time." Marisol's face shifted, not surprise, more exhaustion. "You think I haven't asked that? Her file gets flagged every time it reaches the housing board. Someone up the chain rejects it before anyone reviews it." "Someone with a name?" "I don't know, but it's not random. 14 applications in 6 years. 14 rejections, same day they're filed." Vance's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes turned cold and precise, the look Garrett had learned to recognize in boardrooms, right before Vance dismantled someone without raising his voice. 14, Vance repeated. "Give or take," Marisol said. Wren stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself. "Why does this matter to you? An hour ago you didn't even know if I was alive." "Because someone spent 6 years making sure you stayed exactly where you were," Vance said. "And I think I know who." His phone buzzed. Garrett's name lit the screen. Vance answered, listened, and went still. "Say that again," he said. Wren watched his face change, calm control cracking into something sharper. He lowered the phone slowly. "The original fire marshal's report wasn't lost," he said. "Someone bought it, sealed it with a payment tracing back to a shell company registered to Ashford Realty, the same month the report vanished." Wren's breath caught. "Ashford," she said. "Why does that name?" "Because Ashford Realty owned the Delancey Street building," Vance said. "Preston Ashford's father let it burn, rather than pay for the wiring repair inspectors flagged 4 months earlier." The street went silent around them, the city's noise fading into something distant and unimportant. The man who let your mother die, Vance said, spent 6 years making sure you never had a home again. Marisol pressed a hand to her mouth. Ashford, she said. The same Ashford whose foundation funds half the shelters in this city? The same one, Vance said. He sits on our board, Marisol said, her voice shaking now. He spoke at our fundraiser in March. I shook his hand. Wren said nothing. Her eyes drifted past the shelter, past the street, past the city itself. Wren. Marisol reached for her arm. Did you hear him? I heard him, Wren said quietly. I just don't know what to do with it. A small crowd gathered near the shelter entrance, residents who had stepped outside at the raised voices, a security guard from the building next door, a man walking his dog who stopped mid-stride to stare. One of the residents, an older man named Harlan, who had known Wren for 3 winters, stepped forward. You're telling me the man who burned her mother alive hands out turkeys every Thanksgiving? Harlan's voice cracked. The same man the mayor gave a key to the city? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Vance said. Harlan turned to Wren, something fierce entering his weathered face. You should have told someone. Told who? Wren snapped, anger cracking through her voice for the first time. The police who moved me along every night? The city that lost my paperwork 14 times? Nobody listens to a woman with a violin case and no address, Harlan. Nobody. The words landed hard. Even Vance flinched. Marisol's hands trembled at her sides. I need to call an emergency board meeting. If Ashford manipulated housing placements... Don't, Vance said sharply. Not yet. The moment Ashford knows we're circling, he'll bury everything deeper than it already is. Evidence disappears. Witnesses go quiet. I've watched men like him do it before. Then what do we do? Marisol asked. Vance looked at Wren, and for the first time since the sidewalk, his voice softened. We let the city keep watching, he said. Ashford built his whole life on nobody paying attention, so we make sure everyone does, until he has nowhere left to hide. Wren's fingers tightened around the violin case strap. And if it doesn't work? She asked. If he's too powerful? Vance's jaw set, his eyes hard as glass. Then I make sure he isn't anymore. Garrett's phone buzzed. He read the message and looked up, his face tight. Ashford's people just leaked a story to 3 outlets, he said. They're calling Wren an opportunist, claiming she's known who Vance was for years and waited for the cameras. Wren's stomach dropped. That's a lie. I know, Vance said, but lies move fast when someone owns the microphones. Harlan stepped closer to Wren, his voice low and steady. Then we give them something faster than a lie. We give them the truth, out loud, where everyone can hear it. Wren looked down at the violin case in her hands. For the first time in years, something other than fear moved through her chest. It felt, unmistakably, like resolve. By morning, Garrett had pulled 3 names from the shell company records, a paper trail nobody was supposed to find. One of them stopped Vance cold. Renata Ashford Kingsley. Preston's aunt, a retired city housing commissioner. She approved every rejection, Garrett said, sliding a folder across the desk. 14 denials, all signed off by the same commissioner, all within 24 hours of filing. That's not oversight. That's a pattern. Vance flipped through the documents. His hands, usually steady in every negotiation, moved slower than usual. She's been dead for 2 years, Vance said, reading the final page. Garrett nodded grimly. Her signature wasn't. Someone's been forging it, someone with access to her old credentials. Preston, Vance said. We can't prove that yet, but whoever did this knew the system well enough to bury a paper trail for 6 years without triggering a single audit. Across town, Wren sat in a hotel room Vance had booked for her, the first bed she'd slept in that wasn't a shelter cot in longer than she wanted to admit. She hadn't touched the pillows. She sat by the window instead, violin case open on her lap, running her thumb along a crack in the wood. A knock came at the door. Marisol, carrying 2 coffees. You look like you haven't slept, Marisol said. I haven't. Marisol set the coffee down and sat across from her. I pulled something this morning. An old newsletter from the shelter's donor archive. Ashford's foundation didn't start funding us until 2 years after the fire. Wren looked up. So? So he didn't start caring about homelessness out of nowhere, Marisol said. He started funding shelters right around the time he'd need eyes and ears inside the system. Right around the time your case file started circulating. The realization landed slow, then all at once. He wasn't donating, Wren said. He was watching me. Marisol nodded. I think so. Wren's hands curled around the coffee cup, knuckles pale. Every time I filed for housing, he knew. Every rejection, he made sure of it personally. Why? Marisol asked. Why would a man worth that much money spend 6 years keeping one woman on the street? Wren's eyes drifted to the violin case, to the faded initials carved into the wood. E.C. Her mother's initials burned into memory the same night as everything else. Because I'm the only person left alive who knows what really happened in that building, Wren said quietly. My mother wrote a letter to the city 3 weeks before the fire, about the wiring. About the inspection they ignored. Marisol went still. Do you still have it? Wren looked up, something sharpening behind her eyes for the first time in years. I know exactly where it is. Marisol's phone buzzed on the table between them. She glanced down, then froze. Wren, she said slowly, the smear story just went live, front page. Wren's chest tightened. Read it, she said. All of it. Marisol swallowed hard and began to read the headline out loud. Street musician's convenient memory, Marisol read. Sources close to Ashford Realty question the timeline of Calloway's sudden reunion with billionaire Sullivan Vance. Wren's hands curled into fists. They're saying I planned this. They're saying worse than that, Marisol said, scrolling. There's a quote here from an anonymous family friend, claiming you tracked Vance's public appearances for months before the sidewalk. I've never followed his schedule in my life. I know, but 300,000 people just read it before they read anything else. Wren stood, crossing to the window, gripping the sill until her knuckles whitened. He's not just trying to bury the fire report. He's trying to bury me. Her phone buzzed. Vance's name lit the screen. You've seen it, Wren said, answering. I've seen it, Vance said, and I know exactly what it means. Ashford's scared enough to attack in public. That's not the move of a man who thinks he's safe. It doesn't feel like fear from where I'm standing. It is, Vance said. Men like Ashford only strike this hard when they think the walls are already closing in. Then let's close them faster. An hour later, she stood in front of a storage unit she hadn't opened in 11 years, key trembling in her hand. Vance stood beside her. Garrett waited a few steps back, afternoon light cutting hard shadows across the pavement. After the fire, a caseworker packed up whatever survived, Wren said. I never had anywhere to put it. I kept paying for this unit, even when I couldn't afford food, because it was the only thing of hers left. She turned the key. The door groaned upward. Inside sat a single box, water-stained, taped shut since the year she turned 19. Wren knelt and tore the tape free with shaking hands. Photographs. A church program. Child's shoe that hadn't survived the fire but had survived everything after. At the bottom sat an envelope, yellowed, addressed to the New York City Housing Authority, in handwriting Wren hadn't seen in 26 years. She unfolded the letter carefully, like it might crumble at the wrong touch. I am writing to report unsafe electrical conditions in Building C, Delancey Street. I have made 3 verbal complaints. I fear for my children's safety. Wren's voice cracked reading it aloud. Vance said nothing, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the page like it might vanish if he blinked. At the bottom, a second signature, not her mother's. Received and reviewed, R. Ashford Kingsley. She saw it, Wren whispered. She read it and did nothing. Garrett stepped forward, already photographing the letter with careful hands. This is it, he said. This connects the family directly to the original complaint. Vance's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted into something colder than Wren had seen from him yet. Ashford's people just filed a restraining order, he said. Against you. Against me. Wren's voice rose. I haven't done anything. They're calling it harassment, claiming you're extorting the family with a fabricated story for sympathy and money. The press conference wasn't Vance's idea. It was Wren's. She stood at the podium in a coat that wasn't borrowed, violin case resting against her leg, cameras stacked 3 rows deep outside Ashford Realty Group's headquarters. Vance stood a step behind her, close enough to matter, far enough to let her own the moment. Preston Ashford arrived 20 minutes late, flanked by two lawyers, chin high, jaw set like a man who still believed his name could outrun anything. "This is a private matter," Ashford said, stepping toward the microphones. "I'd urge everyone to remember that unverified accusations." "They're verified," Vance said. He held up the letter, now sealed in a protective sleeve, the handwriting analysis clipped behind it. "Independently authenticated this morning," Vance said. "Your aunt's signature, your family's building. A wiring hazard reported 3 weeks before the fire that killed Wren Calloway's mother and one other child." Ashford's lawyers exchanged a glance. One of them reached for his phone. "And this," Vance continued, pulling a second folder, "is 14 housing applications, rejected within 24 hours of filing, using your late aunt's forged credentials. Every rejection traces to an IP address inside this building." The reporters surged forward. Ashford's composure cracked for the first time, sweat catching the camera lights. "You don't understand what you're doing," Ashford said, his voice low, meant only for Vance. "I can bury you. I can bury her." "You've had 6 years to bury her," Vance said. "You failed." Wren stepped forward then, and the crowd quieted on instinct, the way people go silent for something they sense matters. "I'm not here for revenge," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm here because you spent 6 years making sure I disappeared, and I want you to understand something." She held up the violin case. "You didn't just take my mother. You tried to take everything after her too, and I still have this." She opened the case, lifted the violin, and set it under her chin. The first note cut through the silence. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. A slow, aching melody she had played on street corners for 6 years, now filling a plaza in front of every camera in the city. Ashford stood frozen, unable to walk away from his own headquarters without the image following him for the rest of his life. When the last note faded, Wren lowered the violin. "You tried to erase me," she said. "Everyone's watching now. That's the only justice I need." Ashford's lawyer pulled him back toward the doors, but it was already too late. The clip was spreading, and reporters were shouting questions he couldn't answer fast enough to matter. A young reporter near the front lowered her phone and turned to the woman beside her. "3 district attorneys just opened inquiries into Ashford Realty," she said. "This isn't a scandal anymore. It's an indictment waiting to happen." By evening, Preston Ashford's name had disappeared from every board he once controlled. 6 months later, Wren Calloway stood in the doorway of a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building, with working heat, clean water, and a lock that actually held against the wind. Her name sat alone on the lease. No caseworker's signature, no shelter intake form. Just her name, printed clean at the bottom of a document that finally belonged to her. Marisol had helped her carry the last box up the stairs that morning. Mostly books now, sent by strangers who had watched the video and wanted to give something that mattered. Preston Ashford's trial was set for spring. 2 other families had come forward about buildings his father let rot the same way. Renata Ashford Kingsley's forged signature had unraveled a housing fraud case reaching 3 boroughs. Sullivan Vance visited most Sundays. He came without cameras, without security trailing behind him. Just him, sometimes coffee, sometimes nothing at all. "You don't have to keep checking on me," Wren told him once, sitting on her new windowsill, violin resting across her knees. "I know," Vance said. "I want to." She had started teaching again. 2 students on weeknights, a girl named Priya, who reminded her, in small ways, of who she used to be before Delancey Street took everything. On the anniversary of the fire, Wren played in the same plaza where she once faced Ashford's cameras. No press conference, no crowd summoned for justice. Just her, the violin, and a small group of people who stopped to listen because the music was good, not because of who she used to be. Vance stood at the back, hands in his coat pockets, watching the woman who had once pulled a 9-year-old boy through a burning window play a song only she remembered the words to. When she finished, she looked up and found him in the crowd. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Harlan showed up too, leaning on his cane near the edge of the plaza, clapping louder than anyone. Marisol stood beside him, arms crossed, smiling for the first time in months without effort behind it. A little girl tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed at Wren. "That's the violin lady from the video," she whispered. "The one the mean man tried to hurt." Her mother crouched down. "That's her," she said. "And look, she's still here, still playing." Wren packed her violin into its case, the wood worn smooth from 30 years of hands that refused to let it go. Some debts don't need forgiving. They just need remembering. And on a quiet street in a city that had once looked away, somebody finally did.